Yay, guys, the Oscars are back. I'm excited. Are you excited? Kill me. Yep, we're back with the Oscars this year for ranking all 10 of the Best Picture nominees for this year. And I gotta say, this is probably the best lineup of films we've had since the 2021 Oscars. Every nominee here ranges from bland but passable to incredible tour de forces of cinema. And still no Spider-Verse this year. Great. Anyways, no more preamble. Here's my ranking on all the films that are worse than Spider-Verse. Maestro is fine. For all the hate this movie's been getting, it's not necessarily a bad film. It covers the life and career of the very famous film composer Leonard Bernstein from his humble beginnings to his tragic fall from grace. It's a very bland and forgettable film with some surface level quality to speak on. The performances are very decent, not Oscar worthy, but still good. Carey Mulligan was easily the best one in the film. She was really acting circles around Bradley Cooper, who does fine in the physicality of the role, but kinda just sounds like a deflated rocket from start to finish. His sweat was really doing a good job here though. I really love the scenes where we actually see Leonard composing, especially that scene at the chapel. The production design, cinematography, and editing are great, whoop-de-shaggin' do. Anyways, the story sucks. There's nothing in this man's life besides his iconic music that owes itself to being told through a cinematic lens. The pacing is boring as each scene feels like things are either not progressing or are progressing too much. I never felt anything for the main relationship and conflict of this film, and really the film just accomplishes at making Leonard Bernstein look less sympathetic and more of a gigantic asshole for mostly abandoning his wife at her time of need and never being there for his kids because of his work. And by the end, none of that feels resolved in a satisfying or thematically rich way. Boring movie with some really good moments here and there. It's your standard Oscar bait movie and nothing more. Hope those 6 years really helped you, Bradley. American Fiction is easily the most disappointing film on this list. A social satire of how the media loves to tamper with black stories, turning their complexities into something palatable and safe for audiences. When the story focuses on that aspect of the film, it's really enjoyable and very funny. The opening scene really set a good tone for the film, and there's plenty of jokes that really worked here for me. Jeffrey Wright is finally allowed to express more of his comedic timing, and he's excellent in this film. He does well in those scenes and the emotional moments that happen at many points in this film. If it was simply only that, then this film would definitely be higher on this list. But you always have to have a B plot, and unfortunately, it's quite the snooze fest. We focus on Wright's family life a lot in this film, and it ultimately feels very disconnected from the rest of it. It never truly has an effect on the other half of the story, and it just makes the film's pacing more slow and bloated. I get that it was meant to flesh out the main character more, but ultimately, his arc lies more on accepting his work, and that what he sees in his art isn't what others think, and vice versa. Overall, I kind of felt underwhelmed by this film, and I was really looking forward to it, especially because I'll watch anything Jeffrey Wright's in, but it's still a decent film with some great comedy. When it comes to Zone of Interest, it's one of those films that stuck with me the more I thought about it. It's a haunting, chilling, and brutal film about the banality of evil and how far one's complacency can go as we see a Nazi family lounging about and living their dream life right next to the Auschwitz concentration camp. We never see what's beyond those walls, rather we hear it and it feels all the more impactful. There's a sense of distance throughout this film, obviously because of the horrors happening within those walls, but also how the characters distance themselves from it and how the cinematography keeps their distance away from the family, accentuating the theme of pure disconnect from the now. Admittedly, this technique is a double-edged sword, as while I thought the way the filmmaking told the story was very well done, I never got much substance within the characters at the forefront of this film. See, that's the intention, to keep the forefront surface level and one-dimensional, but there's only so much this family can do before I started getting bored by them. The themes are complex, but the characters aren't. This could also be attributed to the slow pacing, as there's not much of a 3-act structure for this film. It just plays out until it just ends, which also feels bizarre. However, even though I thought the placement of the ending felt abrupt, There was a scene in this film that hit me pretty hard after watching and thinking about it. I won't spoil it as it's now become more accessible, but it involves a door opening, a couple of brooms, and it caps off the messaging of this film in a truly haunting way. So even though there's some things in this film that didn't gel with me, with the characters and pacing, it is something that I think more people should see for its brutal honesty. From one film that showed the horrors of humanity to another, Killers of the Flower Moon may not be one of my favorite Scorsese films, but it does feel like one of his most impactful. It takes a look at the lands of the Osage tribe in the 1920s, and how it slowly started to be uprooted by the greed and prejudice of others. Much like Zone of Interest, it takes a very unapologetic look at the real-life evils of humanity, and how it was treated as normal. That's probably the scariest thing about this film. How comfortable these real-life people were to not only talk about these incredible horrors, but to also do them as well. Eventually, there comes hope at the end of the river, but it only took the water to turn into blood for that hope to arrive. And with this story comes some of the best filmmaking and performances of the whole year. The editing provides some of the film's most powerful moments, such as how long we focus on a character's reaction to events that just transpired. The way the camera is framed helps capture some really tragic moments expertly. And while I think Leo gives one of his best performances here with how he captures his character's complexities in a very subtle way, it's Lily Gladstone who captivated me the most in this film. She does so much with so little going on physically, but those small expressions tell a whole story of her character's current state of being and the emotions stirring inside her. I only wish she had more scenes in this film to shine even brighter, as we don't get much of her towards the second half of the film, and I think if we focus on her more, I think what happens in the film would have probably hit even harder knowing that we're viewing them through the eyes of the people suffering most. Maybe if Scorsese had a member of the Osage help him write the film, we could have gotten that, but overall, I just wanted more of her character, if not just to see Gladstone's star-making performance. I also think some scenes ran the risk of being too long, and whenever Brendan Fraser comes on screen, it took me right out of the moment because of how big he's trying to make his character. I love you, Brendan, but can we dial it down a bit? This is no Ace Attorney level. But even with those complaints, this movie really did have an impact on me. And it's an experience I'll never forget. Oh boy, that was some heavy stuff. I need something to help lighten the mood a bit. What's next? Yo, who fused Frankenstein's monster and Violet Evergarden together? I need to tell him what the fuck, and thank you for this. So here we have a woman being reborn after a mad scientist brings her back to life, where she meets this lawyer, goes on a wild, fantastical journey throughout the world, learning more about herself and finding more of her individuality in life. It's a movie that sure is a lot of things, but I found it to be one of the most captivating films I've watched all year, with one of, if not, Emma Stone's best performance to date. She perfectly exuded each stage of Stella's life and turned a character so strange into someone very relatable. Along with that is Yorgos Lanthimos' expert direction and the wonderful production design, costuming, and cinematography of this film, which are all up there as some of the best I've seen from film last year. It all created a world of pure wonder and creativity, mixing in elements of Victorian and steampunk eras that I thought made it one of the most fascinating worlds I've seen in a while. I still say that as time's gone on, I still think that out of all the things I didn't love from this film, it was Mark Ruffalo's character. He's not bad in this film, he has some really funny moments, but I think the film struggled to just let him go. I thought his character served his purpose after a period of time, but then the film would still keep hold of him, and it just resulted in a character that overstayed his welcome for too long. And as much as I enjoy the film, I will say that most of that love comes from the second half, as the pacing of the first dragged in a few scenes that stood out to me. But all these issues are more personal preferences for me. It's still a remarkable film journey it took me on, as well as the amazing cast of filmmaking involved here. I think a rewatch of this film is in order, maybe when I eventually watch all of Yorgos' films, since this was my first exposure to him. And hey, as a massive fan of Sanctuary, it was a surprise to see both Margot Qualley and Christopher Abbott reunite here in very different roles. A surprise to be sure, but a welcome one. And Anatomy of a Fall is one of the best court dramas I've seen in many years. It takes a look at this widow who is brought to court for being suspected of killing her husband, with the only witness being their blind son. This film has a very ambiguous nature to the way things play out. We're left wondering if this woman really did indeed murder her husband or not. There's enough evidence to say one way or another, and the film does a really good job selling me on that. I can now confirm that Sandra Hüller gave my favorite performance out of all the leading actresses nominated here. Her naturalistic and subtle way of conveying guilt and heartbreak is incredible. The writing is already engaging as it is, but I don't think I would be as high on this film if Hüller wasn't playing the lead role here. The dialogue is some of the best out of any film from last year. I love the way the sound and editing of this film tells us information in unconventional ways. The cinematography makes us feel more involved in the proceedings, like we are one of the juries observing everything. It has one of the most hateable characters of the year with his prosecutor. The main source of evidence in this film is a 50 Cent song. This movie's actually peak. I still say that the kid's dialogue can feel like an adult writing adult dialogue for an 11-year-old boy sometimes, and there are some dragging places. Also, if you love dogs, don't watch. Overall, I think this is one of the most engaging films in the lineup, and seriously, f this movie. Why did you show me that scene? God, the Holdovers is so wholesome. The more I think about it, the better it gets. When three people from three different generations are stuck on campus for the holidays, they start to form unlikely bonds with one another and start to understand each other. This is what you may call the feel-good movie the Oscars always recognize for Best Picture, but just like Coda that won the award, if it's a film that does a good job connecting the viewer with these characters as they just live life within the story, why not give it that recognition? Seeing these characters come together, having many moments with each other, and making their lives better is just such a joy. It also helps that it's set during Christmas to have this kind of story told, as it gives more of them an excuse to come together, and it's just an overall very beautiful film. The performances are all phenomenal, with Paul Giamatti giving the best performance I've ever seen from him, and one of the best of the year, and Divine Joy Randolph just radiating the screen whenever she's there. But Dominic Sessa is truly remarkable as this very troubled kid looking for, but struggling with, connection. Like, this is this kid's first performance in anything on screen, and he gives one of the best young performances I've seen in years. The look of the film gives off all the cozy feelings you would want from a Christmas film like this, as well as making the film feel this sense of nostalgia that I fucked with so hard, like having the old Universal logo at the beginning, or how the credits rolling with this grainy touch to them during the intro. I guess what's holding this film back from being higher is just some scenes dragging at points, and the beginning didn't immediately invest me. But God, this film rocks. This seems to be a lot of people's favorite on this list, and I can see why. I just think there are 3 films that just touched me even more. Past Lives is one of the most beautiful yet heartbreaking films I've seen in years. The film charges through the complicated history of these 2 lifelong friends as one moves from Korea to live a new life in America, while the other stays behind, eventually reuniting as adults where they confront the love they have for one another and the choices they've made up until this point. It's a film that doesn't go the conventional route you might think for a film like this. While we want these 2 to drop everything and get together with each other, life sometimes takes the wheel and they must live with the choices they made in life. It's a movie that many, including myself, can relate to, and it continued to resonate with me since watching it. I hate that the Academy completely snubbed Greta Lee for Best Actress, as she gives one of the most realistic, relatable, emotional, subtle, and radiating performances I've ever seen, and she would be my choice for the best performance by an actress this year. Teo Yoo also gives a very soulful performance here, and their chemistry is so real here, which makes what happens in the film all the more devastating. We just want these characters to be happy together, and while they may be happy with the lives they have now, that feeling of what could have been still enters both their and our minds. This is also one of the most beautifully crafted films from last year. Again, another snub in both the cinematography, editing, and director categories. Every element in the filmmaking adds to the naturalistic vibe this film is going for, as well as making the moments that affect the characters most hit all the more hard. Yeah, some of that does make some scenes slower than others, which is really the only issue I have with the film, but otherwise, This is one of the best debuts from a director I've ever seen, and it still remains one of the best films I've watched all of last year. Yeah, I'm not gonna pass up the opportunity to talk about Barbenheimer at the same time. Really, these two films made 2023 for me. Watching these two movies back to back was one of the best theater experiences I've ever had. But in regards to which one is my favorite, let's first talk about Oppenheimer. I've already discussed this film in my Nolan video, so most of my thoughts are there. But this is one of Nolan's most engaging scripts of his career. How he turns a 3-hour biopic about science and theory into an engaging look into a man's mind and morals as he literally changes history is a towering feat that only he could pull off. The film expertly provides you with the necessary information needed to make the film riveting from the jump. The way the film is able to tell this man's life in such a thought-provoking way through the editing, visuals, and cinematography is astonishing. Cillian Murphy gives the best performance of his career and my favorite leading actor performance from last year, adding this layer of both sympathy and terror into this man's arc. RDJ is amazing, no shocker there. I was never bored throughout the film as everything just felt right for what the film was going for, and while the sound mixing is still questionable, I can't excuse that, especially for what it does right for the film, accentuating the fear and anxiety of this very complex individual and the massive impact of his brutal creation. And then there's Barbie, which is fucking fun. This was easily the most fun I've had watching a film all last year. The tone of the film is perfect right from the get-go, and even when it goes into very philosophical and emotional areas, they never feel like they lose that very upbeat tone set from the beginning. The characters and the acting are incredible. Margot Robbie nails the inner conflict her version of Barbie has throughout the film, and she still has my favorite individual moments from the film. Also, if you're still upset about her snub from the Oscar, she's still nominated for being a producer of this film. There you go. Ryan Gosling is an absolute joy in this film. I died, was rebirthed, and then died again during the I'm Just Ken scene. God, I'm so excited to see performed. Oh my god. I love the arcs both Barbie and Ken went on, leading to some surprisingly thoughtful endings for their characters. I say surprising because, like, who the fuck would go this hard with the writing for this film? Only Greta Gerwig could have made this film the way it is, and yes, I'm still mad at her snub for director. How? She navigates the arcs and themes of the film so well. Even when the film sounds like it's being preachy, there's more layers to it than the film just saying it explicitly. The production design is so well made, literally dooming the pink paint industry just to give us magic. I love how the cinematography, visuals, and editing help build on many of the jokes, and the soundtrack is incredible, even if you had to sit through Lizzo to get to the good stuff. Overall, I'm just so happy we live in a world where not only did this film turn out to be good, but it was so good that it's a Best Picture nominee alongside a movie about the making of the atomic bomb and a movie about the horrors of the Holocaust. Anyways, which one is my favorite of the Best Picture nominees? Well, as much as Nolan really perfected his craft with Oppenheimer and probably deserves the award more, I mean, you know, Barbie is one of two films I would say is a 10 out of 10 for me from last year for achieving everything it set out to do so perfectly. So for me, my favorite Best Picture nominee for this year is Capitalism. And now it's time for the annual tradition that only started last year as a last-minute addition of seeing what is my personal Best Picture lineup. Of the original nominees, I would keep Anatomy of a Fall, Barbie, The Holdovers, Oppenheimer, and Past Lives. Yeah, that's how good this lineup is when half would be my personal 10. Anyways, let's get weird with it. The first slam dunk. What happened, Academy? Did you all of a sudden hate sports movies since King Richard? This is one of the most engaging scripts of the year with some amazing animation and awesome music. So I think that's enough for it to be in the competition. Weebs deserve some respect. Just this one time.
Deku! You're such a silly baka. Like, why do you gotta be such a silly baka? Silly little baka.
This is the most obnoxious thing I've ever experienced in my life.
Godzilla -1. I love the VFX nomination, but damn it, it deserves more. It's a filmmaking marvel, but surprisingly, one of my favorite screenplays from last year. May December was easily the biggest film to be snubbed here, and it's a crime it's so missed out on in comparison to fucking Maestro. Like, yeah, it got a nomination for screenplay, which it deserved, but I mean, Natalie Portman, Julianne Moore, Charles fucking Milton? Sanctuary was definitely not going to be recognized for anything, but it should have. I think the director and cinematography added so much personality to a film taking place in one location, along with the script that knew exactly how to utilize the location to its advantage, as well as crafting two incredible characters played by two actors giving some of the best performances from last year. And yeah, again, where the fuck is Spider-Verse? Why doesn't it have a screenplay nomination? Why doesn't it have a VFX nomination? Why doesn't it have an editing nomination? Why the fuck does it not have a score nomination? I love John Williams, but seriously, you nominated Dial of Destiny with no memorable new pieces of music and just rehashes the classics? Remember the last time you did that for a John Williams score and what it was nominated over for that year? I seriously don't understand why they implemented this rule here when shit like this, with very little new and original elements added to the music, gets nominated over one of the most high energy, hype as hell, emotionally powerful scores ever to grace the silver screen. I seriously want an answer because holy shit, is this the biggest example of Hydrogen Bomb versus Coughing Baby I've seen in a while. Anyways, go fuck yourself, Academy, and have a good day everyone else. Bye!